Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku disappeared. If you guys enjoy this movie, comment down below and let me know. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like, and don't forget, subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. So let's start the video. Are they ready? A tall beefy man in a suit asked. His face was deformed and all but a mouth was missing. Tubes were in different parts of his body. Even a large pipe was inserted in the center of his throat. 5 years ago, he was beaten almost beyond repair. And until 3 years ago, he had to heal at a much slower rate. He was standing next to a much smaller man in a dimly lit lab. The room was filled with a very eerie aura. He had bizarre goggles, silver hair all around the sides and back of his head, and a lab coat. Both were facing 3 large containers filled to the brim with a strange teal liquid. 3 silhouettes were floating in these containers. Not yet, but they will be soon, the other man had said. He was proud of his work. He was helping his boss achieve his dream, and his boss was helping him achieve his own. Perfect, the first man said with a gigantic smirk daubed across his face. When will we attack? Soon. When should I have them ready? Have them ready in 3 months. We will start their training then. The faceless man's smirk was still plastered on his face. They will be a huge threat for the heroes. Get ready, All Might. Your death is near. He walks away back to his chair to rest. Even after almost 5 years, he still did not have all his strength back. Keep me posted. I want constant updates on their progress. Will do, sir, the man in the lab coat said. And then, his boss disappeared into the darkness while he turned his attention to the 3 floating figures and their files. You will be my finest creations. Aizawa sat at his desk in the teacher's lounge in frustration. His eye bags were darker and heavier than usual. He was a pro hero, a teacher, and very good with cases like these, but he was at a loss here. Almost 3 years ago, a girl and Nezu's personal student disappeared without a trace. Furthermore, 9 months ago, 2 boys also vanished without a trace. No leads, no witnesses, nothing. All Might was the last person to see and talk to the 2 boys, but they parted ways and was later seen at the police station at the estimated time of their disappearance. Nevertheless, things started to get weird because these were not the only cases. Every so often, a child around the age of 12 to 15 years old would disappear. Then, after about 6 to 9 months, these cases would go cold, then Eraserhead would take them up. Eventually, he would run into a wall, and then the child would show up in a random location, dead. Moreover, those were the ones that were gone the longest. Some were only gone for a few months before showing up dead. However, they all had in common that every child who disappeared when they were found had scars, injection points, unknown chemicals in their bodies, and other signs that showed that they were experimented on. Then, finally, there had been a break, and everyone thought that the kidnappings were over. However, they were wrong. These 3 kids then suddenly disappeared, and this left everyone shocked. And all anybody knew was that the same kidnapper was at it again. Aizawa believes that they may have had success with these 3 kids this time. But why? What was so different about these kids than the ones before? What was their goal? So many questions were left unanswered in his head. The black-haired man placed his hands on his forehead and groaned in more frustration. At that exact moment, a very skinny man that was wearing a giant costume that was way too big for him walked in. Any luck, All Might? Aizawa asked on cue as if he could sense the man coming. No, All Might said, now deflated in his usual form. After 3 total hours of searching, he still found no trace of them. But Hawks is still out there searching along with Endeavor. Good. The more people helping find these kids, the better. All Might walked over and sat in a chair near Aizawa. Any luck on your end? He asked with a concerned look on his face. Aizawa was starting to lose sleep over this, and it was beginning to show too. Aizawa chuckled a little. You ask the same question every day when you come in here, and every day I give you the same response. No, I haven't. Okay, but you should get some sleep. Aizawa, the walking skeleton, said with a more concerned look. I can't, Eraserhead said. Not until I find these kids. Okay, I will leave you to it. All Might walks away as he says this with a saddened tone in his voice. He was worried for his friend. Who would not be? Uraraka sprinted down the hall, looking for her classroom. The girl was grateful she decided to wear short black shorts under her skirt. The dark teal skirt casually would fly up as she ran, and without the shorts, it would leave much to the wandering eye. Class 1A, Class 1A, Class 1A, where is it? She skids to stop in front of a door at least 3 feet taller than she is. Ochako stares in amazement at the size of the door. What would her classmates be like? Would they like her? What did the year have in store? Who is her teacher? Her grip on her backpack tightens as these questions and more swirl around her head until a voice interrupts her thoughts. Why don't you stop procrastinating and go inside? Uraraka looks around in surprise for where the voice is coming from. Down here, wide-eyed, the brown-haired girl looks down at a long black-haired man in a yellow sleeping bag. He unzips the sleeping bag and steps out while 𝗂𝗏𝗄 continues to stare in surprise. I said, "Why don't you go inside?" The girl shook her head to snap out of her trance and turned around to open the door. The students slowly quiet down as a brown-haired girl and black-haired man who just walked into the classroom. 𝗂𝗏𝗄 quickly hurried to her seat and sat down while the man stood by the door, sleeping bag still in hand. "It took 8 seconds for you all to shut up. That won't work. Time is precious, and rational students understand that," the man spoke in a monotone voice. He had heavy eye bags, clearly noticeable by the class, and a stubble evident on his face. He wore black, baggy clothes, a belt with gray pouches, black combat boots, and a gray scarf. The man's long black unruly hair went everywhere, and some parts covered his face. He looked like a hobo, tired, unwell, and unkempt. "My name is Shota Aizawa, and I'm your teacher." Shock filled the classroom. Everyone was staring wide-eyed, except for the teacher, whose stoic face remained unfathomed. "This guy's our teacher," whispers erupted from the students, angering Aizawa. But he did not have time for this. He had to teach this class of future heroes and work on the missing kids' cases. He pinched the bridge of his nose. "I don't have time for this, so let's get to it." He reached into his sleeping bag while he continued, "Put these on and head outside." He pulled out a navy blue jacket from his sleeping bag, accented with white and red stripes. All the students stared blankly for a few seconds before complying. A deflated All Might sits at a desk in another room, remarkably different from the desks in any standard classroom. To his right, colorful books line and fill the wall. A pencil yellow suit covers his frail body, accompanied by a royal blue tie and a white dress shirt. He reads from a book with secret plastered across the front. UAS course doesn't follow the normal academic path. He clicks his tongue in slight annoyance. "Get the wrong homeroom, teacher, and life is hell." "What? A Quirk assessment test?" the class says in shock and confusion. "What about orientation?" Uraraka asked. "Heroes don't have time for pointless ceremonies. Here at UA, we're not tethered to traditions. That means that I get to run my class however I see fit." Aizawa turns around to face the class. "You have been taking standardized tests most of your lives, but you've never got to use your quirks in physical exams before." He holds up a device as he says this. "The country still tries to pretend we're all equal by not letting those with the most power excel. It's not rational. One day the Minister of Education will learn." The tired teacher turns to face the spiky redhead. "Kirishima, you managed to score the most points in the entrance exam. What was the farthest distance throw with a softball in junior high?" 52 meters, I think, Kirishima replies. "Right, try doing it with your quirk." Aizawa tosses the strawberry sharka ball. Kirishima catches the ball and walks to the circle, thinking about what he would do. How would he throw the ball? He was nervous, but it was never smeared across his face. He stood in the circle and turned to face his teacher, waiting for instructions. "Anything goes, just stay in the circle." Kirishima stretched, and he continued to think about how he would throw. He could not overthink. He could tell Aizawa was getting impatient. His quirk hardened his entire body, so it was not great for throwing things. Activating his quirk, he rewound his arm and chucked it as strongly as possible. "All of you need to know your maximum capabilities," the monotone voice of Aizawa spoke. The projectile flew high in the air before landing on the ground. Aizawa intensely gazed at the device in his hand as a digit materialized on its screen. The hobo then turns back to the class while holding up the apparatus with the number 205. 4 meters on its screen. It is the most rational way of figuring out your potential as a pro hero. All 18 students stare at the screen in astonishment. "Wow, 205. 4 meters. Are you kidding me?" a yellow blonde-haired boy said. He had a black streak, almost representing a lightning bolt. "I want to go. That looks like fun," a bubblegum pink alien girl cheerfully said. She had yellow horns and eyes. The only unusual thing about her was that her eyeballs were not white but black. "Now that's what I'm talking about, using our quirks as much as we want," another boy spoke in excitement. His black hair was almost down to his shoulders. This Latino look-alike had strange elbows. They were extraordinarily circular and had no tip when they bent. The other students also got excited. However, that feeling was short-lived when a certain someone spoke up. "So this looks fun, huh?" Aizawa said while smirking, head tilted down. He appeared to be slightly angry at the comments made by the three. Class 1 very quickly piped down and looked at him as he said this. "Idiots. Today you'll be competing in 8 physical tests to gauge your potential. Whoever comes in last has none and will be expelled immediately." The class was shocked by this news. All Might was still in the room, but his expression changed. He stared, wide-eyed at the book he was reading. Oh crap, they got Aizawa. The book he was reading was none other than the faculty registry book. All Might worked with him before on a mission, so he knew all too well what this tired and stoic man did last year, so he was very nervous about what he would do to the class. He had heard it from teachers and other faculty members around the school. Eraserhead had expelled an entire class of first-year students because they did not have enough potential. Immediate expulsion, many people thought. Terror filled their bodies, and it was evident on their face, too. However, one student, who had her black hair tied up in a ponytail, did not seem too worried, but no one noticed. Instead, they were all too worried about the possibility of being expelled. Like I said, I get to decide how this class runs, Aizawa said, then tilted his head back up while pushing some strands of hair out of his face with his hand. Understand, his pure soulless black eyes had a slightly crazed look to them. If that's a problem, you can head home right now. You can't send one of us home, 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 said, her usually bubbly and cheery voice now laced with anger and worry. I mean, we just got here. Even if it wasn't the first day, it isn't fair. Aizawa kept his cool and quickly snapped back with an answer. Oh, and you think natural disasters are? The students looked at him, puzzled at this. Or power-hungry villains. Catastrophic accidents that wipe out entire cities. No, the world is full of unfairness. It is a hero's job to try and combat that unfairness. If you want to be a pro, you're going to have to push yourself to the brink. For the next 3 years, UA will throw one terrible hardship after another at you. So go beyond, plus ultra style. Show me it is no mistake that you got here. The fear that once filled them now turned into confidence. Now then, we're just wasting time by talking. Let the games begin. From then on, one by one, the class completed each test. Some excelled in speed, others in strength, and others excelled in more peculiar ways. The 5th test was the softball throw Kirishima demonstrated earlier. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 took the ball in her hand, activating her quirk. Then, with all her strength, she threw it and went flying, higher and higher until it was out of sight. Aizawa looked at the screen before showing it to the class, a bright pink symbol appearing on the screen. Infinity. The others yelled in astonishment and bewilderment. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏 giggled shyly as she scratched the back of her head. The rest of the tests came and went almost as fast as time itself. Then, it was time for the results. They were as follows. Momo Yaoyorozu, Quirk, Creation. Shoto Todoroki, Quirk, Half Hot, Half Cold Tenya Ida, Quirk, Engines Fumigage Takoyami, Quirk, Dark Shadow Mizo Shoji, Quirk, Dupli Arms Meshurao Ajiro, Quirk, Tail Ijiro Kirishima, Quirk, Hardening. Nina Ishido, Quirk, Acid Ochako 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, Quirk, Zero Gravity Koji Koda, Quirk, Anavoice Rikido Sato, Quirk, Sugar Rush Tsuyuasi, Quirk, Frog Yuga Aoyama, Quirk, Naval Laser, Hanta Siro, Quirk, Tape Denki Kaminari, Quirk, Electrification Kyoka Gyro, Quirk, Earphone Jack Toru Hagakure, Quirk, Invisibility Hitoshi Shinso, Quirk, Brainwasho, and as for who's going home, that was just a logical deception to bring out your best. Most of the class was shocked at this, especially Hitoshi Shinso. The purple-haired, baggy-eyed boy nearly fell to his knees as he let out a breath he did not know he was holding. Only a certain black-haired girl, Momo Yaoyorozu, remained calm as she spoke. I mean, yeah, I thought it was obvious. Maybe I should have said something. The students changed out of their PE uniforms, and the rest of the day went as normal. Little did anyone know, though, catastrophe would strike, and soon, missing puzzle pieces would fall into place. While the students were leaving the field, a dark shadowy figure nimbly landed in a tree and perched on a branch near his partner. He was sitting on another branch, writing in a notebook. They were wearing sleeveless shirts, black pants with a stripe going down the side, and black knee-high combat boots. Gray belts, with a chain drooped along the side, grips their waists. Their black 3/4-length sleeve jackets were met with black fingerless gloves with a small design painted on them. Black hooded cloaks, embroidered with a gigantic black beautiful Japanese dragon on the back, draped over most of their clothes. Under the hoods, they had a headset with a mic attachment. Simple dark gray meshed assassin-style masks covered the bottom half of their faces. These ensembles were accented, each with a different color. Did you get everything you need, Emerald? One of the figures asked the other. A vibrant amethyst purple accented his clothes. He was slightly taller than Emerald, and his spiky ash blonde hair, which had a black streak, partly covered one half of his face. His ruby red eyes, emotionless and dull, watched as his partner endlessly scribbled in his notebook. Almost amethyst. I'm finishing up the last one. Then, all I need is the names and other info on the class themselves from Aquamarine. Emerald replied, not taking his emerald green eyes, just as dull and emotionless as his partner's, off of his notebook. His forest green hair also covered part of his face, and unlike Amethyst, he grew out his hair and tied it back into a low ponytail. It also had a black streak in it. However, instead of a purple accenting his clothes, it was replaced with a vibrant emerald green. Emerald was an observer and a careful planner. By watching someone fight with their quirk, he could determine how it works and its strengths and weaknesses. As a result, his plans work out 100% of the time. Amethyst, the group's lead fighter, clicked his tongue and grumbled in annoyance. Well, she better hurry the fuck up. I've already finished my job, and I'm starting to get bored. Amethyst leaned back, slumping against the trunk of the tree, still not taking his eyes off his notes. The greenette chuckled at the gesture. Have some patience, will you, Amethyst? 𝗵𝗲 is our leader, and she had the most difficult task out of all of us. All you had to do was scout out the location for the upcoming attack. Emerald snapped at the other boy, who stiffened at the comment and the sassy tone. While Amethyst was stronger than Emerald in terms of quirks and raw strength, Emerald was more intelligent, so he did not want to get on the latter's bad side. He shivered at the thought of what happened last time he ticked off Emerald. While the students were leaving the field, a dark shadowy figure nimbly landed in a tree and perched on a branch near his partner. He was sitting on another branch, writing in a notebook. They were wearing sleeveless shirts, black pants with a stripe going down the side, and black knee-high combat boots. Gray belts, with a chain drooped along the side, gripped their waists. Their black three-quarter-length sleeve jackets were met with black fingerless gloves with a small design painted on them. Black hooded cloaks, embroidered with a gigantic black beautiful Japanese dragon on the back, draped over most of their clothes. Under the hoods, they had a headset with a mic attachment. Simple dark gray meshed assassin-style masks covered the bottom half of their faces. These ensembles were accented, each with a different color. Did you get everything you need, Emerald? One of the figures asked the other. A vibrant amethyst purple accented his clothes. He was slightly taller than Emerald, and his spiky ash blonde hair, which had a black streak, partly covered one half of his face. His ruby red eyes, emotionless and dull, watched as his partner endlessly scribbled in his notebook. Almost Amethyst. I'm finishing up the last one. Then, all I need is the names and other info on the class themselves from 𝗵𝗲. Emerald replied, not taking his emerald green eyes, just as dull and emotionless as his partner's, off of his notebook. His forest green hair also covered part of his face, and unlike Amethyst, he grew out his hair and tied it back into a low ponytail. It also had a black streak in it. However, instead of a purple accenting his clothes, it was replaced with a vibrant emerald green. Emerald was an observer and a careful planner. By watching someone fight with their quirk, he could determine how it works and its strengths and weaknesses. As a result, his plans work out 100% of the time. Amethyst, the group's lead fighter, clicked his tongue and grumbled in annoyance. Well, she better hurry the fuck up. I've already finished my job, and I'm starting to get bored. Amethyst leaned back, slumping against the trunk of the tree, still not taking his eyes off his notes. The greenette chuckled at the gesture. Have some patience, will you, Amethyst? 𝗵𝗲 is our leader, and she had the most difficult task out of all of us. All you had to do was scout out the location for the upcoming attack. Emerald snapped at the other boy, who stiffened at the comment and the sassy tone. While Amethyst was stronger than Emerald in terms of quirks and raw strength, Emerald was more intelligent, so he did not want to get on the latter's bad side. He shivered at the thought of what happened last time he ticked off Emerald. I'm here, and I got the information you needed, Emerald. 𝗵𝗲 spoke as she nimbly landed on another branch just in front of them, startling the two. Her outfit was more or less the same. She also had a short black skirt under her belt and over her pants. Tealish blues accented her clothes. Her auburn red waves are pulled back into a French braid instead of its usual tight ponytail, with pieces removed from the tight braid, shaping around her face. The black streak, the only thing she shared with the other two, could not be seen with her hood on, but it was in her braid. She had an eye patch on as if she was hiding something. All three had unhealed scars on their faces that were there as far back as they could remember, which was about 10 to 11 months. 𝗵𝗲's memory went back almost a year, making her the smartest and the leader of the group. So, are we ready to go? Master wants back as soon as possible. A pale blue eye, no more emotionless and dull as the others, stared at the two boys, waiting for a response from the two. Emerald calms his racing heart before closing his notebook and putting it away with the pen. Yeah, I needed the paperwork you stole. Did you also get the class schedule? Yep, and just like Master said, they will be heading to the USJ for rescue training. And All Might is supposed to be there. Great. I'll call Kurogiri to warp us back, Emerald said, clicking a button on his headset. Kurogiri, send a warp gate to our location. Okay, Emerald, give me a couple minutes, a voice said from his headset. Does this mean we get to go home? Amethyst asked. His voice perked up slightly. Yes, Amethyst. Once the warp gate gets here, we'll go home. 𝗵𝗲 was used to Amethyst's impatientness. She just shook her head and lightly chuckled at his sudden excitement. Ugh, fucking finally, Amethyst said in annoyance and relief. He threw his hands in the air as he said this. Both Emerald and 𝗵𝗲 chuckle at the latter's response. Then, a purple misty portal appears next to them, and Amethyst is the first to notice. Move out of my way, damn extras, he says, pushing past the two and knocking them off the branch. Luckily, their quick reflexes kicked in. Grabbing onto the branch, they used their momentum to swing up, do a flip, and land back on the branch. Emerald rolls his in annoyance, clearly pissed off. He is so going to get it. Emerald was usually pretty chill and also used to Amethyst's antics, But at that moment, Amethyst had overdone it. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 giggled at this. She had to admit, it was pretty funny to watch Amethyst get his butt handed to him by Emerald. She turned toward the portal and waved Emerald over. "Come on. The quicker we go through, the quicker you can deal with him." 𝗧𝗵𝗲's tone returned to a slightly more relaxed tone. She then walked into the portal, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Emerald chuckled as an evil smirk slowly made its way onto his face, yet no one could tell with the mask still on his face. "Oh, I plan on it," he thought to himself as he followed shortly behind his comrades. Finally, he appears on the other side of the portal at an old bar. Fortunately, the public did not use it, and the entrance was hard to find, making it the perfect place for a villain hideout. Amethyst, the ash blonde, turned around to see Emerald calling his name in a sing-songy tone. His killing intent aura was suffocating the latter. It was then that Amethyst knew he screwed up. He slowly walked backward as Emerald continued to walk up to him. With the wall slowly coming up behind him, Amethyst decided to make a run for it. He sprinted in one direction, screaming, "I'm sorry. Please don't kill me." Amethyst knew that his pleas were meaningless, but he still tried regardless. Emerald chased him around the room, trying their best not to knock anything over. "You can't escape, you angry Pomeranian," Emerald replied, furious with the boy. This comment caused Amethyst to stop in his tracks. "Pomeranian." He turned around and walked toward Emerald. The two boys are now face to face. "I am not a Pomeranian, you damn broccoli boy." His voice became loud, low, and deep as he grits his teeth. "Oh really? Is that so, boom boom boy?" Emerald was still fuming, yet he remained calm and collected. He knew what buttons to push to get a reaction out of Amethyst. "I'm going to fucking kill you," Amethyst barked back. "Oh, I'd like to see you try," Emerald retorted. That was the last straw. Amethyst snapped and lunged at the green-haired boy, causing their hoods to fall off. He ripped the mask off of the latter, relieving the boy's freckles. The two continued to fight, pulling, tugging, biting, punching, and kicking each other left and right. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had already removed her mask and was now sitting at the bar, turned around and leaning back with a blue raspberry soda in her left hand, watching the drama unfold. Behind the bar stood 𝗬𝗫𝗫, a tall man cleaning a cup in a suit and a thick piece of metal supporting around his neck. He appeared to be entirely made out of a deep purple mist. 2 seats down from her sat the 22-year-old young master, unbothered by the boy's quarrel, rather amused. His skin was ashen olive color, and his messy and unkempt hair was light pale blue as it fell at his shoulders. The stature of the man was thin and malnourished. He wore a hand on his face, which hid his ruby red eyes, crusty face, especially around his eyes, and a scar on his lip. His black pants and black long-sleeved shirt were short enough to reveal his wrists and ankles. The man also wore bright blood-red shoes that went up to his ankles. His name was 𝗬𝗫𝗫 Shigaraki. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 seized a sip of her beverage before slamming it loudly back on the counter, which only caught the attention of the two older men. Anger plastered on her face as she stood up from her spot. "Shut the fuck up, you damn idiots." The two squabbling boys stopped in their tracks and slowly turned their heads to see 𝗧𝗵𝗲 looming over them. Her bloodthirsty aura almost filled the entire room. They quickly got off of each other and scurried over to the other side of the room, rambling many apologies to the girl. Shigaraki laughed at the sight. He knew that besides their master, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was the only one who could control the rambunctious boys. She took a deep breath and slumped back into her seat. Emerald and Amethyst got up and sat down at the bar. Silence was all that filled the room. Not an awkward silence, but rather a comfortable one. It was a break from the noise of the world around them. None of the hustle and bustle from the world outside the bar could be heard through the 4 thick brick walls surrounding them. "Did you 3 complete the tasks you were given?" A voice spoke up, breaking the silence. Everyone in the room turned their attention to the small TV on a stand perpendicular to the bar wall. There was no face on the screen, just the words audio only. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 stood up from her spot and faced the TV, bowing at a perfect 90-degree angle as if it were a person. "Yes, we did," she spoke as she stood up. Emerald and Amethyst stood up from their seats and stood behind 𝗧𝗵𝗲 as she continued. Emerald watched as the class took a quirk assessment test, writing info down about their quirks, how it works, strengths, and weaknesses. "I managed to sneak into the building undetected and get the class's roster and schedule. Furthermore, you were right, they are going to the USJ for rescue training." Amethyst scouted and mapped out the area, giving us more of an advantage. "However, on my way back out, I saw something. All Might, he looked like a walking skeleton, deflated and skinny. 5 years ago, that hit you gave him took a significant toll on him. Most of his organs are gone. He has a massive hole in his side, and he can only do hero work for a max of 3 hours before he deflates. Any longer than that, and his maximum time may shorten." "Excellent work, you 3. You have helped out enough for today." Kurogiri warped them to the doctor's lab. "He needs them for something," the voice replied, cheerful about the news it had received. "Yes, master," the human warp gate said while creating the portal. "You 3, meet with Doc and then rest up till we attack." but don't forget to train occasionally." "Yes, sir," the trio said, bowing down at a perfect 90-degree angle and walking into the portal. "Tamura, how are the rest of the preparations going?" "They're going great. We have managed to recruit many underlings for the attack. Are the weapons ready?" Tamura spoke with a raspy voice. "They will be ready in time, but I'm giving weaker ones than initially planned. And they will fight the students and teachers along with the rest of the villains," the voice said. Its tone is not changing one bit. "What? Then who will be fighting All Might, besides yourself and the weapons? There isn't anyone strong enough to lay even a finger on him. Tamura, you must remember to take advantage of all your resources. As we speak, the trio is getting an upgrade. This will make them even more dangerous. They will be able to take on All Might and maybe even kill him," the voice said. Despite its deep tones, its glee was detectable. Shigaraki took a deep breath and sighed. "Okay, I trust you, Master." Shigaraki finished his drink and stood up from his spot, leaving his glass on the counter. Kurogiri took the glass and cleaned it before putting it back on the shelf. Tamura started to walk out of the room. "I'm going to go back to my room. I'll come back down later for dinner." "Okay, young master," Kurogiri said, his voice flat and monotoned as he wiped down the counter. He watched as a pale blue-haired man disappeared behind the corner before returning to his work. "Just you wait, All Might," Shigaraki said as he walked down the hallway. "Everything you have built up over the years will soon come crumbling down." And with that, he disappeared farther into the dimly lit hallway. The students came back to class on Thursday. They erupted with joy when they found out that the #1 hero, All Might, would teach them heroics that day, training in battle. They got more excited when they saw suitcases come out of the wall with their hero costumes inside. After the battles, classes continued as usual. On Friday, the student piled into the school in their seats. Aizawa walked into the room, and as if on cue, the students piped down. First, he congratulated the students on their performances in their mock battles. Then, he told them they had to do one more thing. The students stiffened in fear. However, that moment was short-lived. They were relieved when they heard all they had to do was pick a class representative, standard class stuff. They picked Tenya Ada as their class rep and Momo Yaoyorozu as their vice rep. And soon, the end of the day also arrived, and the weekend start shortly followed. The next day, Saturday, Aizawa walked into the meeting room, where a few pro-heroes were already seated. Even a deflated All Might was sitting at the U-shaped table. The sleep-deprived hobo sat down. Then, a white rat-mouse bear thing popped out of his scarf where it was hiding. The suit that it wore was clean, crisp, and polished. It crawled out of the scarf, down the other man's arm, and sat in one of the two empty chairs. Aizawa sat in the other. "Nezu, why did you call this meeting?" the R-rated hero, Midnight, asked. Her white, purple, and black hero costume was skin-tight and didn't support her breasts, so it left much to the wandering eye despite covering her entire body. She also had a red mask, and her long dark purplish-blue hair flowed down her back. "I have to agree with Midnight." "Why?" 𝗬𝗪𝗀, the king of the concrete jungle, asked. His entire body was made out of concrete, and his costume was a simple moron piece of clothing accented with gold. It was sleeveless and stopped above his ankles. He also wore dark gray and yellow boots, and the little bit of hair he had was tied into a ponytail. Aizawa just sighed. He knew what this meeting was about because he and Principal Nezu had set it up. "Just be patient," Nezu replied in his calm manner. "We are just waiting on our guest." A few minutes passed by before a knock was heard on the door. "Come in," the rat-like creature spoke. The door opened, relieving a dark brown-haired male in a tan trench coat that went down to his knees, a white button-up top, a dark navy blue tie, black dress pants, dark brown shoes, and white gloves. All Might's eyes widened in shock and confusion as the man's face became more visible, for he recognized the man. The man walked to the front of the room before the teachers and spoke. "Hello, I am Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He bowed down at a 50-degree angle as he said this. Then, standing back up, he continued, "I was called here because of what I was told happened on Thursday." "Yes," Aizawa said. "On Thursday, while giving my students a quirk assessment test, I saw someone in a tree watching us. They seemed to be writing something down as he was doing so. Then, as the students left the field, I saw another figure land next to them. Later, as the students were heading to lunch, another figure, this one more slender than the other two, joined them. They exchanged words and then left through a purple portal. On top of that, Pro Hero 13 contacted me. According to what she told me, one of them was in the USJ, just walking around, drawing the layout on a large sheet of paper, almost as if he was mapping the place out." Nezu spoke, continuing where Aizawa left off. "There, also, has been a rise of villains in the area. Most are in back alleyways, but there is something peculiar about them. They aren't committing any significant crimes, just backyard deals and stuff like that," the detective said. He was reading from a manila folder he held in his hands. "Based on this evidence, I wonder if they are preparing for something. It makes the most sense. I mean, why else would this stuff be happening? Present, Mike said, louder than most. You're too loud, Mike, Aizawa said, pinching the bridge of his nose. Sorry. Okay, so do we have any idea what they may be preparing for? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 asked. The absence of voices filled the room as everyone hesitated to speak. No one knew what they would have to prepare for. That was until 𝗧𝗫 spoke up. I think I may have an answer. Also on Thursday, someone broke into UA without setting off any alarms and stole the names, pictures, descriptions, and plans for next week for your class Aizawa. If my memory serves me right, the only major thing on your class's itinerary is the USJ. That off-campus facility would be perfect for an attack, especially if All Might will be there. And the fact that someone was snooping around and mapping out the area just proves my theory. Everyone was stunned, for they couldn't grasp the complete intelligence of the principal. If that is the case, how should we prepare for this if 𝗧𝗫 is right? We don't know anything about our possible attackers, Midnight says, voicing her concerns. If the original plan was just to have All Might, Erasure, and 13 there, maybe we should add one extra teacher there. One that can help level the playing field. On top of that, we should have a backup way of communication in case they have someone who can cut the power. So if the comms are down, it'll be a good idea to be still able to contact the school, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said, his voice sounding like that of a robot. I agree, Midnight said, but who should we send? Based on the place's layout and other factors, I would say 𝗵𝗲𝗄, ectoplasm, or even 𝗧𝗵𝗲 should go, but it depends on what the rest of you think. So they continued to discuss what to do. And they decided on sending 𝗵𝗲𝗄s with the class and having the rest of the teachers on standby in case something happened. And the meeting had ended. Everyone was sure they had the upper hand now, but how much of an upper hand? The answer to that question and many others would soon follow. So, we sure that they will bring another teacher on scene? Shigaraki asked. Besides himself, Kurogiri, Aquamarine, Emerald, and Amethyst were sitting around the map, a few of Emerald's notebooks, and some other scattered papers. Positive. Amethyst saw the cameras at the USJ watching him, knowing that someone is planning to attack. And if they have noticed the rise of villains in the area, they'll want to take extra precautions and bring another pro hero just in case to protect the students, Emerald said, radiating confidence. Based on the list of pro heroes and their quirks, there are a few good options. Midnight's quirk can cover a large area, but she can't control who is and isn't affected, so probably not her. Presentation 𝗵𝗲𝗄 is the same way. Both have a chance of injuring a student or another pro. However, it doesn't mean they won't be at UA on standby just in case. Everyone else nodded their heads in agreement, but Shigaraki was still resentful. The pale blue-haired man didn't believe that he needed help planning the attack, but his master thought otherwise. He had to remind the latter once again to use his resources. His master also told him that those three were extremely intelligent and that with their help, they would have a higher success rate with the mission. Shiggy still believed that he didn't need help, but since it was his master that suggested that they help, he agreed, reluctantly. Now, ectoplasm's clones can pop out anywhere and at any time, but he does have a limit of how many he can produce at a time. On the other hand, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 has excellent accuracy and can protect his students and fellow pros. Then, 𝗵𝗲𝗄s can manipulate the concrete floor, which is great for offense and defense. They don't call him the king of the concrete jungle for nothing. Looking at my notes, it could be any one of these teachers. So we should have a plan in case it is either one of those three teachers. I agree with Emerald, Aquamarine said. Same, Amethyst said. I would also have to agree. Young Master, Kurogiri said. Emerald is very analytical and takes outstanding notes. His intelligence in this field is not something to be taken lightly. Although I know you are against them helping plan the attack, you should listen to what he is saying. Okay, fine, the man-child sighed in defeat. So, now let's go over the plan once more, Aquamarine said. Throughout the night, the group discussed the plans for the big day. There was much disagreement among the party. Hurtful words were hurled at each other, and soon they even launched themselves. In the end, they managed to agree on a single plan. Aquamarine, Amethyst, and Emerald also came up with a plan to deal with the possibility of whatever other pro hero came with the original 3 pros in the class. Tuesday was spent finishing up the last-minute preparations. And with that, the day had arrived. The next few days went relatively quickly for the students till Wednesday came around the corner. That morning, All Might was on his morning commute to UA. However, he stopped crime left and right on his way there. This made his everyday 15 commute a 3-hour commute, draining his energy. Currently, he is sitting in a break room with 𝗧𝗫𝗄 having tea. That same day, the heroics classes for Class 1 had started that afternoon. Aizawa walked into the room. Sir, what will we be doing today? 𝗧𝗏 asked. This time, All Might, myself, and 2 others will supervise. He held up another sign that said rescue and resumed talking. It's rescue training. The class erupted into cheers and groans as some were excited. Others were not, as they were sure it would be another hard day of training. Aizawa glared at the class in annoyance. Hey, I'm not done. That shut the class up. He held up a remote and clicked a button. The slots holding their hero costumes came out as the hobo continued. It's up to each of you whether or not to wear your costumes, as some of them are ill-suited to this sort of activity. The training site is a bit remote, so we'll be going by bus. That's all. Get ready." The class grabbed their costumes and changed in the locker rooms. Once done, they all met outside a large bus. "Line up according to your ID numbers. Fill those seats in an orderly fashion," Ada said as he blew into the whistle that he somehow got. Wow, he's getting into his role as class rep. Some people thought as they did as he said. Then, they loaded into the large bus. Ada had a feeling of happiness, but that feeling was short-lived as he got on the bus and sat down. "Darn, it's that type of bus," the blueberry-haired boy said while slumped over and his head hung low. "All that for nothing," Mina said, trying her best to comfort the latter. As the bus ride continued, the students talked with each other. "Wow, so Aizawa trained you?" Kaminari was in shock at this news. Zinso nodded, and the two continued to talk about how Aizawa trained him in hand-to-hand combat and taught him how to use a scarf like his. This conversation and many others like it continued all around the room. Isui, Mina, Kirishima, and Aoyama talked about what it would be like to be a pro hero and their quirks. Gyro tried to sleep while listening to her playlist. However, the loudness of the others disturbed her. Other students remained quiet during the long ride. "We're here. Look sharp." "Now," Aizawa said from the front of the bus as it came to a halt. The students got out and walked into the monumentally huge dome-shaped building in front of them. "Whoa, is this the Universal Studios Japan?" The students stared in awe at the scene in front of them. There's a flood zone, landslide zone, conflagration zone, etc. Every disaster and accident you can imagine. I built this facility myself. I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. The students looked to see who had spoken. "It's the Space Hero 13, someone had said. Next to her stood 𝗵𝗲𝗄. 13's costume was similar to a spacesuit that astronauts wore. "Ooh, I love 13, Ochako giddily said. 13, where's All Might? I thought he was meeting us here," Aizawa asked the rescue hero. "About that." She looked at him and held up 3 fingers as she continued just above a whisper. "It seems he just about reached his limit during his morning commute. He is resting in the break room." The class didn't know about the number 1 hero's injury, and the pros didn't want them to find out. The height of irrationality, Aizawa scoffed in annoyance. "So be it. Let's get started." Aizawa glanced around. "Well, we should be on guard, just in case." The hobo thought to himself. "Before we do, I have 1 or 2 points. Or 3. Or 4. The class stood there awkwardly before she continued. "As I'm sure many of you are aware, my quirk is called Black Hole. It can suck in and tear apart anything. And you've used it to save people in all sorts of disasters," Uraraka said, still excited to be meeting one of her favorite heroes. "Indeed. However, my power could easily kill. I've no doubt there are some among you with similar abilities. In our super-powered society, the use of quirks is heavily restricted and monitored. It may seem that this system is a stable one, but we must never forget that it only takes one wrong move with an uncontrollable quirk for people to die. Through All Might's battle training, you experience the danger that your respective quirks can pose to others. This class will show you a new perspective. You will learn how to utilize your quirks to save lives. Your powers are not meant to inflict harm. I hope you leave here today with the understanding that you're meant to help people. That is all. I thank you for listening." She took a bow as she finished. The students clapped and cheered for her. "Great. First off," Aizawa started but quickly stopped. He slowly turned around to see something forming in the center by the fountain. It developed into a sizable purple portal with people filing out of it. Aizawa whipped back around. "Huddle up and don't move." 13. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 protect the students. Class 1 looked at the plaza center, confused. "What the heck's that? More battle robots, like during the entrance exam?" Kirishima asked. "Don't move. Those are villains," their teacher said as he put on a pair of black and yellow goggles that hid his eyes, which he wore around his neck under his scarf. His class became terrified at the news. Once everyone had loaded into the plaza, the purple portal had reformed into a person. 13. Eraserhead. "And 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗧 is it?" it said as it did so. "That's odd." A person in black clothes and a hood accented with tealish blues spoke. "According to the staff schedule I stole the other day, All Might is supposed to be here." Aizawa recognized the hooded person and 2 others like them, with a vibrant amethyst purple and a vibrant emerald green. "Of course, it was those 3 that I saw in the tree off in the distance." Eraserhead spoke while pieces of his scarf started to fly up. A man in plain black clothes, red shoes, and hands attached to his face, neck, shoulders, and the back of his arms looked around in anger. "Where is he? We've come all this way, and brought so many playmates." He paused for a second. "All Might, the symbol of peace. Is he here?" "Doesn't look like he is here yet," the hooded man with vibrant emerald green accents said. "However, 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗧 is, just like we planned, so we should still continue." "Yes, I'm so ready for a fight," the one with vibrant purple accents said while cracking his knuckles. "You're right, Emerald," the man with hands said. "Now, I wonder if some dead kids will bring him here." "Villains? No way," someone said. What villains would be dumb enough to sneak into a school for heroes? Asked another. Sensei, aren't there intruder sensors? Momo asked 13 in worry. Yes, of course there are. 13 responded, panic-stricken. Are they only here, or also at the main building? Either way, if the sensors aren't working, it has to be one of their quirks that's doing it, Todoroki said while looking out over the sea of villains below them. This place is far from the campus, and they picked a time when there'd be few people here, so maybe they're not as dumb as they seem. They must have an objective, because this is a well-coordinated sneak attack. 13. Begin evacuation. And, 𝗵𝗲𝗧, try calling the school. Aizawa shouted back at the two teachers. One of these villains must be jamming the sensors. There's a good chance one of their electric types is causing the interference. Kaminari, go with 𝗵𝗲𝗧 in case he needs help getting in touch with the school. You may need to use her quirk. Got it, the human Pikachu replied, still frightened at the scene before him. And with that, Aizawa jumped down. Class 1 ran back towards the exit with 13 and 𝗵𝗲𝗧. Nezu, can you hear me? 𝗵𝗲𝗧 said into his walkie-talkie as he ran, hoping that the principal would hear him. Yes, 𝗵𝗲𝗧. 𝗵𝗲𝗧 let out a deep breath. Despite the statics of the response, he was glad to hear the mouse-like creature's voice. We were right. Villains have attacked the USJ. Send help immediately. 13. The students and I are almost out while Eraser is holding them off. But 𝗵𝗲𝗧 stopped in his tracks and stared at the scene in front of him. But send help in fast. 𝗵𝗲𝗧 put the walkie-talkie back into his pocket and focused on the danger in front of him. I should be there with them, the skinny All Might said while Nezu poured him a cup of tea. You should be resting. You can join them later before they leave. In the meantime, enjoy a cup of tea with me, Nezu said while handing the man a cup of tea. Despite his mental protest and the strange gut feeling, he listened to the latter. They continued to talk about All Might's hero work from that morning, and Nezu even scolded him. However, their conversation was broken when they heard someone call the principal's name. Nezu, can you hear me? Nezu looked to see that someone was trying to contact him through the walkie-talkie on the table. They both heard that 𝗵𝗲𝗧's voice was on the other end. Nezu looked at All Might, confused, before picking up the small black device. Yes, 𝗵𝗲𝗧, the principal said into the walkie-talkie. We were right. Villains have attacked the USJ. Send help immediately. 13. The students and I are almost out while Eraser is holding them off. But send help and fast. And with that, the connection was cut off on the other side. 𝗵𝗲𝗧. Nezu tried calling for the hero, but he got no response. He and All Might exchanged worried glances before he nodded at the hero in front of him. Go. All Might nodded. Then buffing up, he ran out of the room. I hope you make it in time, Nezu said before calling the rest of the pro heroes on campus. Calling all pros. Gather up and meet by the front gate. The USJ is under attack. I repeat, the USJ is under attack by villains. With his quirk activated, Aizawa descended towards the villains below. Ranged squad. Let's move, one villain said. So who's this? Our intel said it was just supposed to be 13 and All Might, said another. Dunno, but he's coming at us all alone, a third said. A dead fool, then. The first villain shouted. Then, the three tried using their quirks, but no one couldn't. I can't shoot, the third villain said, confused. But before he could register what was happening, Aizawa's scarf wrapped around the three before pulling them up, then back down, and smashing their heads together. You idiots. That's 𝐅𝐴𝐴𝐶𝐴𝐻𝐸AD. Emerald yelled at the group of villains in front of him. He can cancel out your quirks just by looking at you. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Remember your training, you dumbasses. The man with vibrant amethyst purple shouted. Got it, Amethyst. One of the villains shouted back. Aquamarine, when can we join in the fight? Amethyst impatiently asked. Soon, Amethyst, a woman with the tealish blue accenting her clothes, said. I'll let you know. He cancels quirks. A villain that looked like he was made out of rocks said before laughing. Let's see if that trick works against us heteromorphic types. No, it doesn't, Eraser said while punching the guy. Only against operative or transformative types. However, statistically, guys like you tend to shine in close quarters combat. He continues to fight more villains, which is why I've got countermeasures for you. He's good at hand-to-hand, and those goggles hide his eyes, so we don't know whose quirk he's canceling, one villain said. Even a whole mob of us isn't slowing him down, I see, another said. I hate pro-heroes, Shigaraki said while scratching his neck. Ordinary villains don't stand a chance against them. 𝗵𝗲𝗧. 13, and Class 1 looked at the purple mist man that now loomed over them. Sorry, but I can't allow you to leave, it spoke, greeting. We are the League of Villains. Forgive our audacity, but today we've come here to UA High School, this bastion of heroism to end the life of All Might, the symbol of peace. They all looked at him in shock. Did he really mean that? We were under the impression that All Might would be here today, but it seems his schedule was revised. Well, no matter, he started to spread his purple mist around them as he continued, my role remains unchanged. The teachers and students shield themselves from the oncoming darkness surrounding them. They didn't know what would happen. Soon the darkness retreated. Sato, Ida, Akahako, Shoji, Siro, Mina, 13, and 𝗵𝗲𝗄 opened their eyes to find the rest of the students gone. They were now on their own to face the villain before them. Where is everyone? Can we confirm their locations? Ida asked. They've been scattered, but they're all in the facility, 13 replied. I called Nezu, so backup should be coming soon, 𝗵𝗲𝗄 said. All we have to do is hold this guy and the other villains off until help arrives. You're right, 𝗵𝗲𝗄, 13 said. It would be even better if we could get the students to safety in the process. Well, how do we do that? Siro asked. Physical attacks are no good. He just warps away. This guy's quirk is too tough to handle. Class president, 13 said to Ida. Yes, he replied. Your job is to run back to the school and update them on what's happening. 13's tone became more desperate as she spoke. We don't know when backup will arrive, just that it is coming. Since Nezu knows, there is a chance that he set All Might ahead of everyone else, but we can't be too sure. The class president can't very well abandon his class, Ida said while shaking his board-like hand, up and down, from the elbow. She said go. Sato shouted at the blueberry-haired boy with glasses, out the emergency exit. There are alarms on the outside, which means that these guys must only be causing trouble in here. So, if you make it out, they can't follow you, Siro said while getting in a fighting stance. Shake off that mist man with that speed of yours. Ida started to tear up at the encouragement and support he was getting. We can provide all the support you need, Hiroraka said with a confident smile on her face, and we will. Mina gave an affirmative nod, agreeing with the short brown-haired girl. Aside from the fact that you have no hope, the purple mist man said, what sort of fool discussed strategy in earshot of the enemy? It hardly matters if you overheard, 13 said. Activating her quirk, you can't stop us. We came as soon as we heard, Midnight said while running with Snipe, Vlad King, Ectoplasm, and Present Mike hot on her tail. Power Loader was still a little ways behind them. A few other pro heroes also showed up, but they were still confused about what was going on. So, it looks you were right, Nezu, Snipe said. We should get going as soon as possible. The longer we wait here, the more danger those kids could be in, including Eraser, 13, and 𝗵𝗲𝗄. You are right, Snipe. We should get loaded onto the bus. All Might already went ahead, so that should help them out, Nezu said, worry laced in his voice. Let's just hope that they will be alright till he arrives. The heroes nodded before loading onto the bus. 13. Looks like a disaster relief hero can't measure up to even the most ordinary of heroes when it comes to a fight, the mist said. Sensei, Mina screamed in horror at the scene in front of her. And now you find yourself ripped apart by your own power, the warp gate said as it opened a portal in front and behind 13. The powerful suction tore apart her costume, badly injuring the hero. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 cursed to himself, for he could have bought her some time to stop using her quirk before she could be injured. However, he couldn't dwell too much on it now. Ida, she told you to run. Sato shouted at his class priest, and with tears in his eyes, he did so. Ida sprinted at the door using his quirk as a portal appeared in his path. My dear scattered children, the purple mist said while opening a portal, it would hardly be to our benefit if you called her your teachers. But before Ida could be teleported to God who knows where, Shoji jumped up and grabbed the wrap gate, stopping him from forming the portal anymore. Ida picked up speed and made his way to the door. How impertinent, the villain shouted, still trying to get to Ida. I won't allow you to leave. The villain had its back turned to the students, not realizing that it had exposed part of itself. Hiroraka noticed a piece of metal showing from his back and ran toward it. Mina called out to her classmate, but she wasn't listening. The automatic doors, Ida said to himself, can I kick them? Or are they too thick for that? You underestimate me, 4 eyes. The warp gate almost had Ida in its grasp. Now vanish. But, before it could get to the blueberry, a certain chocolate-haired girl jumped up and grabbed it, activating her quirk as she spoke. I'm not sure why, but if you're wearing this thing, then you must have a real body in there, Hiroraka said. Now go, Ida. She tossed the now weightless villain into the air. Siro shot a piece of tape from his elbow toward the metal brace of the villain. Go, he shouted. Do it. She got my body, the warp gate thought to himself. Siro launched the villain so it couldn't reach Ida, who ran out the door to find the pros and update them on the situation at large. If he calls for help, it's game over, the villain said while still in the air before teleporting away and reappearing next to the group of hooded villains and their leader, Tamura Shigaraki. The villain spoke as it began to form behind the villain whose name it had called. Kurogiri, is 13 dead? Shigaraki asked. He's incapacitated, but there were some students I couldn't warp away, and one of them escaped. On top of that, I heard 𝗵𝗲𝗄 say that he had alerted the school. Kurogiri's body could be clearly seen at this point. The hand-covered man started to laugh and scratch his neck in anger. Kurogiri, I'd turn you to dust if you weren't our ticket out of here. We won't stand a chance against dozens of pros. It's game over, man. It's game over for now. We're leaving. Kurogiri was about to warp them out of there when someone else spoke up. Wait, Kurogiri, Aquamarine commanded. Then she turned to Shigaraki. Young master, it isn't necessarily a bad thing. Think about it. If UA is alerted, they will most likely send All Might ahead while the rest come later. Since most of the pros will go by bus, it will be over an hour till they get here, which will give us time to kill the symbol of peace before they arrive. I agree with Aquamarine, Emerald said. This may be the only chance we get at killing All Might. We have to take it. I don't care, whatever they said, as long as I get to fight someone. Amethyst said with a glint of excitement in his usually emotionless eyes. Fine, we'll stay, Shiggy said. I hope you're right. All Might was sprinting to the USJ as quickly as he could, but he stopped in his tracks to see Ada, the class rep, running towards him. All Might, thank God I ran into two. Ada said while panting. 13 told me to run and update you and the rest of the pros on what was going on. The pro nodded. So what is happening right now? All Might said. He was still trying to hold up his smile in front of the student, trying to reassure him it would be okay. Ada nodded. Taking a deep breath, he started from the encounter with the Warp Gate villain up until he left the building. I don't know where most of my classmates are or what's happening right now back there, he finished with tears starting to form in his eyes. It'll be okay, All Might said with empathy. Keep on running back to the main building. You should run into the rest of the teachers at some point. Ada looked at the hero and nodded before continuing on his way. Once he was out of sight, the smiling pro hero was no longer smiling. Instead, a frown had made its way onto his face as anger filled his eyes. He dashed to the USJ faster than before. Ada ran for what seemed like forever until he passed another bus, causing him to stop in his tracks and turn around. The bus did the same. The doors to the bus opened, and the blueberry-haired boy walked inside to see the rest of the teachers. This caused him to sigh in relief. He told them what he told All Might, and the teachers were in shock. Nezu let him rest and catch a ride with them, and they continued on their way, still leagues behind the #1 pro hero. With a loud bang, All Might burst onto the scene with anger still on his face. His was pulled back except for the two parts that stood straight up. His white button-up and pencil yellow striped pants actually fit him. The royal blue tie he once wore was now being ripped off his neck. Sato, Shoji, Mina, Ochako, Cementos, Ciro, and a few other students who had made it back to the front were washed over with relief to see the #1 pro had come to save them. Fear not, he shouted, I am here. Shigaraki, Emerald, Amethyst, and Aquamarine had evil grins make their way onto the villains' faces. They knew that the real battle would begin, for the boss had made its appearance, but he wasn't happy. So the final boss does show up, Emerald said, a smirk hidden behind his mask. To be continued, Shigaraki said. Kaminari screamed as he avoided another attack from a villain, who clicked its tongue in annoyance at this. As soon as Momo, Gyro, and himself were warped here, they had to dodge attacks left and right. He was wearing his hero costume. It was a simple white t-shirt with a pair of black pants and a black long-sleeved jacket. Both his pants and jacket had white lines, and the white lines on the jacket formed the lightning bolts in certain spots. In addition, he had black boots and a radio antenna attached to the side of his head. Yikes, my whole life flashed before my eyes, he yelled as he ran back to join the two girls. Who the hell are these guys? What are they doing here? Worry about that later, Gyro said while holding a weapon Momo made for her. She was also wearing her hero costume, which was similar to Kaminari's. It was a pair of black pants and a black jacket, but instead, it had a coral pink t-shirt that had holes towards the bottom. Her boots stopped halfway up her calf and served as speakers when she plugged her earphone jacks into them, amplifying her quirk. We need to figure out how to get away from this mob, Momo said, holding another weapon she gave herself. Her costume was way more revealing compared to most of her class. It was a red, sleeveless turtleneck leotard with white accents around holes where her shoulders came out of, as well as her waist and hips. A big hole in the center revealed parts of her stomach, chest, and neck. Also, a yellow band went across her chest by the collarbone, and more pale yellow bands started at the hips and went halfway down her thighs, acting as a skirt. She had a stand attached to the back of the skirt where she placed a book of information on what particular objects are made out of. Hey, you're a lightning guy, right? Gyro asked while attacking a villain. Just fry him to a crisp, would you? Weren't you paying attention during battle training? We were partners, the yellow-haired teen said. I can only cover myself in electricity. Sure, I can discharge it, but I can't control it. I'd hit you guys too. It's like with Todoroki's power. I'm trying to call the school and get an update, but my special transceiver is being jammed. Get it? You can't rely on me here. I'm relying on you. You sure blab a lot for a guy, Gyro mumbled to herself. Fine, be a human stun gun, she said as she pushed Kaminari into one of the villains. Seriously, he said. Kaminari activated his quirk out of reflex after he bumped into a villain. Hey, it worked. I'm pretty strong. Just rely on me, guys. Well, that was easy, 𝗲𝗏 said, surprised and kind of relieved. Stop messing around, you punk. Another villain shouted, using his quirk, attempting to hit the electric yellow blonde. He failed, however, and ended up getting shocked. Then, another villain got caught in a net made by Momo. Get serious, you two, she said sternly. I actually had a pretty good plan in mind, she said as she moved one of her earphone jacks down to her shoes. In my costume request, I asked for a way to focus my sound in one direction. Once connected, a high-pitched sound roared toward a group of villains. Gah, my ears, a villain screamed while holding his ears. It was like a deafening scream. It's ready, Momo yelled to her classmates while she kicked another villain. It took some time. That's how it is with larger objects. Momo crouches down, and suddenly, a big blanket pops out of her back, ripping her costume. This blanket then fell and covered Momo and 𝗲𝗏. A sheet. The surrounding villains looked at the sight, confused. Trying to shield yourselves. A 100mm thick insulation sheet, Momo replied while lifting a part of the sheet. Now, 𝗵𝗃. Gotcha. 𝗵𝗃 turned his head, replying to his black-haired classmate with a smirk on his face. Then, he whipped back around and activated his quirk. You see, I'm actually super strong. The villains screamed in agony as the electricity flooded their bodies. Once he was done, all the villains passed out from the shock. Now then, Momo said while lifting the sheet again, I'm worried about the others, let's hurry and regroup. You're having a wardrobe malfunction, 𝗲𝗏 said, looking at her friend in worry. I can make you new clothes, Momo replied, though I wonder how 𝗬𝗏𝗄𝗧 was able to reach the principal. 𝗵𝗃 couldn't do it, so how could he do it? All he had was a walkie-talkie. That walkie-talkie was probably specially made by Principal 𝗬𝗏𝗄𝗧, so its signal couldn't be interfered, 𝗲𝗏 said. Yeah, you're probably right, the vice rep said, still slightly unsure, but she figured she could ask the cement hero later. She looked around. 𝗲𝗏 and her were fine, but 𝗵𝗃 had gone brain dead and acted like an idiot. 𝗲𝗏 was laughing at the boy, and none of them noticed the hand that appeared out of the rumble. Where are they? A villain heard one of his comrades say. I don't care, the villain started to say before he was cut off. 𝗫𝗏𝗄, who was around the corner, had activated his quirk and smirked. Gotcha, the tired boy said without his mask. He turned around the corner and looked at the villain before him, now frozen by 𝗫𝗏𝗄's quirk. Now, help us fight the villains here. And without uttering a sound, the now brainwashed villain did as commanded. Dude, snap out of it. Another villain shouted as it tried to block the onslaught of attacks. Unbeknownst to him, a distinct invisible girl hit him upside the head, rendering him unconscious. Take that, 𝗲𝗏𝗄𝐻 said. Her smile couldn't be seen, but anyone could tell she had one on her face. This was one big game of hide-and-seek tag, and she was the queen at it. Every villain was on high alert because this duo was great with stealth and could pop up anywhere. Unfortunately for them, 𝗲𝗏𝗄𝗧's whole body was invisible, so no one could find her if she was quiet without clothes. Her purple-haired classmate suggested that she ask the support course if they could make a suit for her that could turn invisible on command so she isn't so exposed. She has thought about it, but she wants to figure out more of the implications of her quirk first. 𝗫𝗏𝗄 had a scarf like their teacher, who trained the boy to use it. He also had a mask that changed how his voice sounded once projected, a voice decoder of sorts. Since his quirk requires his voice to be used, a voice modifier wouldn't do, but this mask is the way around it. His costume was a full-body black suit with a hexagonal pattern and a vibrant purple outlining the seams. He wore black military combat boots, a belt with pouches, and fingerless gloves. Despite his black costume, it keeps him cool in the warmer months and warm during the colder ones. So who's next? 𝗫𝗏𝗄 asked. Attack. A villain shouted. 𝗫𝗏𝗄 reacted quickly and wrapped the villain in his scarf and tossed him to the ceiling before slamming him back down onto the floor, knocking him out. Come on, they're just a couple of high schoolers, another villain shouted. He, too, was knocked out by 𝗲𝗏𝗄𝗧. After that, villains started coming in groups. At first, they could handle it, but they soon became overwhelmed. Even the villain 𝗫𝗏𝗄 brainwashed was freed. 𝗫𝗏𝗄, 𝗲𝗏𝗄𝗧 called out to her teammate questioningly. Yeah, 𝗫𝗏𝗄 replied. I think it's time to disappear. The already invisible girl said. I couldn't agree more. And with that, 𝗫𝗏𝗄 reached into one of his pouches and pulled out a smoke bomb before throwing it at the ground as hard as possible. A loud bang could be heard, followed by a dense blanket of fog filling the room. Where did they go? A villain shouted. I think I got one, another said. No, that's me, you idiot, a third said. Chaos ensued among the villains as 𝗫𝗏𝗄 and 𝗲𝗏𝗄𝗧 quietly made their way out of there, safe to fight another day. Once out, they quickly made their way to the entrance, trying their best to avoid the center plaza. They saw Kirishima and Ajiro struggling to get out of the flood zone and gave them a hand. However, before the four could make their way back to the entrance, they saw a sight that would forever haunt them. Todoroki was trying his best to protect himself and 𝗬𝗎. He used his flames not to fight but to warm the now sleeping amphibian-like girl. Upon arrival, the two were forced to flee and hide in an alleyway. The bicolored team used his ice to make a tall wall for them to hide behind. However, this caused the boy to feel frostbite on his right side. On the bright side, the wall did block out some of the wind and snow. "CC cold," 𝐒𝐴𝐲 barely managed to say. "I know, 𝐒𝐴𝐲, but please endure this for a bit longer. Help will be here soon," Todoroki said. He was exhausted, to say the least. He has never used his flames for this long before. But then again, he has barely used his flames to begin with. He has stopped using his flames in rebellion against his father, Endeavor, for as long as he can remember. He loathes his father for what he has done to him and his family. On the bright side, the cold is helping a bit to regulate his body temperature, but that isn't good for 𝐒𝐴𝐲. He didn't want to even think about what could happen if help didn't arrive in time. Todoroki didn't even have time to think about that. Instead, he had to focus on saving his classmate, so he put 𝐒𝐴𝐲 down and stood up. "I'll be back soon, 𝐒𝐴𝐲," he said before climbing the ice wall and disappearing from view. 𝐒𝐴𝐲's eyes fluttered open enough to see Todoroki leave. "TT Todoroki," she reached a shaking hand toward the bicolored boy. But it was too late, for he had disappeared out of sight. 𝐒𝐴𝐲 closed her eyes and drifted off to a deep sleep. For now, no villains were in sight, so he slowly climbed down the wall. But he knew he would still have to be cautious. All he needed was to get something he could burn. After that, he could focus on keeping himself and his classmate warm. Unfortunately, he had trouble finding stuff, so he was left with no other choice. Using his ice, Todoroki would trap villains, knock them out, and take parts of their clothes as fuel for a fire. He quietly climbed back over the ice wall to find 𝐒𝐴𝐲 still shivering in the cold. But this time, she wasn't alone. A villain had found his way over the wall into the amphibious girl. "Get away from her," Todoroki shouted. Anger flooded his voice. "Make me," the villain taunted. Todoroki covered his fist with ice and ran toward the villain full of fury. He punched the villain as hard as he could, knocking him out. Then, the peppermint boy ripped parts of the villain's clothes off and started burning them with the rest of the stuff he got. "Hopefully this will keep us warm for a while," Todoroki thought to himself as he laid 𝐒𝐴𝐲 close to the fire. Once she was comfortable, he laid down on the other side of the flames and drifted off to sleep. 5 minutes. 5 minutes was all he could hold his breath for. Ever since the purple portal opened over the deep pool, Kirishima and Ajiro fought for their lives. 5 minutes would fly by, then the two would have to swim up for air and back down again. Their movements were slowed due to the water. The redhead knew activating his quirk would make him heavier, and he shouldn't use it, but he would be left vulnerable. Ajiro wasn't having any luck either. His tail weighted him down quite a bit. 7 minutes had gone by, but it felt like an eternity, as if time itself had slowed down. It felt as if their brains were continuously pounding against their skulls. Soon, the two teenagers needed air, and they managed to catch a break at the 8-minute mark. The redhead and tail boys swam as quickly as they could, and finally, their heads broke through the water's surface, panting like a dog in summer. "That was way too close for comfort," Kirishima said, still panting. "Yeah, but we only took care of some of them," Ajiro agreed while barely staying afloat. "Well then," the strawberry shark said disappointingly, "back down we go." Ajiro nodded. They both took a breath before heading back down. The two boys keep on fighting. Occasionally, they would swim up to the surface for air before heading back down. This cycle was on loop like a song stuck in someone's head until something broke the circle. A villain was fighting with them while the rest were trying to kill them. Kirishima was confused by this. He kept on watching the scene in front of him until this concentration was broken by someone tapping him on his shoulder. He looked to see Ajiro trying to get his attention. He pointed to the surface once the boy did so, and Kirishima nodded. The two broke the surface with surprised faces. "What was that?" Kirishima asked. "I don't know," Ajiro said. But then, their new ally suddenly broke the surface and faced them, doing absolutely nothing. That was when they saw it. "Wait a minute," Ajiro spoke. "Look at the villain's eyes. Remember when ● demonstrated his quirk on Monoma at lunch that one day? Monoma's eyes looked exactly like that when he was under our classmate's control." "Yeah, you're right," Kirishima said, still trying to remain afloat. "But if there is a villain under his control, where is the purple-haired boy?" And as if the villain was answering their question, he pointed to the shoreline where 𝗏 and �パ𝐵𝐵 were waving. The two boys who were swimming for their lives were relieved to see a couple of their classmates. They swam over to them with the villain protecting them from behind. Once they reached the shore, 𝗏 and 𝐑𝐵𝐵 helped them out of the water. "Now, knock yourself out," 𝗏 said to the villain, who did as he was told. Then, 𝗏 turned to his other classmates that he had just helped out. "You two good?" he asked. "Yeah, we are now," Kirishima said. "Good. Now let's try to get back to the entrance and rejoin the rest of our classmates," 𝗑𝐵𝐵 said. The purple-haired and red-headed boys nodded and started walking with the invisible girl. But their tailed friend stood still, not paying attention to them. "Ajiro, come on, let's go," 𝗏 said. But Ajiro didn't respond. He just pointed in the direction he was looking. The other three looked to see what their classmate had in such a daze. That's when they saw it, too. Aizawa, bleeding from the head, with an unknown creature on top of him. Mr. A. Rinso started to shout, but luckily his classmates covered his mouth and dragged him away. None of the villains heard them, and they were able to disappear. However, what they saw will haunt them forever. Dark Shadow, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 yelled. The dark creature listened to the bird head's command and attacked the villains advancing from the right, then to the left, behind, in front. Villains were everywhere. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 cursed to himself. Whoever devised the plan on who would go to which zone was intelligent, knew his strengths and weakness, almost as if they watched him. The boy looked to his left and jumped out of the way of an attack from a villain. Dark Shadow soon came to his rescue and countered. Now that he thought about it more, if they watched him, they probably watched the rest of his class, too. But the next question was when. He thought about possible times someone could have watched him in his class. Then, it hit him, literally and figuratively. The Quirk assessment exam. He thought to himself after a villain had hit him in the back. Luckily, Dark Shadow had his back and protected him from another attack by the villain. The more he thought about it, maybe because of this, Mr. Aizawa and the other teachers were on edge. But he couldn't think about this for too long. He had to get out of here. Dark Shadow, cover me, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 shouted. Got it, the Shadow Bird replied. They ran through the villains while Dark Shadow would go around his master and attack villains. One villain even dropped his weapon, which 𝗧𝗵𝗲 picked up and used to defend himself. Maybe I should be a weapon for myself. I can't rely on Dark Shadow all the time, he thought to himself, since it was working well. After 10 minutes of running, the two finally managed to distance themselves from the villains. Soon, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and Dark Shadow found a part of a building to hide behind and catch their breath. Once he was sure they were out of danger, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 looked around and found that he could hide in the building. So he crawled into it and hid there till he knew he was safe. Then, he started to contemplate more about the villains and how much they actually knew. If they took notes about him and his classmates during their quirk assessment, this so-called League of Villains must have someone good at quirk analysis. I'll have this to report this to the teacher, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. Dark Shadow, any villains nearby? None near us, but we still shouldn't linger here for 𝗧𝗵𝗲, the Shadow Bird replied. That's good for now, but he knew they were looking for him. Soon, they would be near him, and he would have to fight for his life again. Let's move before they find us, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said while crawling out of the building. Then, he started running farther anyway from the villains still at large in the area. The heat was overbearing. Aoyama and 𝗂𝗧 were hiding from villains in alleyways and buildings. Unfortunately, 𝗂𝗧 couldn't be of much help since no animals were around, so they were in a world of trouble. And Aoyama had a limited number of shots he could make before the stomach pain would become too unbearable. So they had to resort to their only option, hit and run. 20 minutes, that was how long they had been going for. Two villains coming from the right, 𝗂𝗧 said with hand signals. Aoyama knew the animal boy wasn't much of a talker. 𝗂𝗧 had been a shy boy since the first day of school when they first met. He managed to say a few words here and there once he got comfortable around them, but his mouth was zipped shut because of the two's situation. So Aoyama just nodded and charged his naval laser. Where are those two brats? A villain said, I want to hit something. Be patient, will you? Another said, you'll get your chance soon. Just be patient. The first villain rolled his eyes. They continued to walk past the two boys, somehow not noticing the heavy breathing coming from the two boys or Aoyama's naval laser. Once they entirely passed, the French blonde shot at the two, knocking them out. Then, the two boys sprinted away. We need to get out of here, Aoyama said, fear lacing his voice. 𝗂𝗧 shook his head rapidly in agreement. Sweat dripped down from their brows. The heat from the flames rose around them. They knew they needed to get out of there, or they may not last much longer. So the two made their way toward the exit, running into a few villains here and there. Running through flames and climbing over debris, the two pushed on despite the sweltering heat. Finally, after what felt like hours, they made it out, and Aoyama used his quirk to weld the door shut. Now that they were out of danger, 𝗂𝗧 and Aoyama fell to their knees in exhaustion. But as he did, he started to think. How did they plan this so well? How did they know 𝗂𝗧's weakness? Why were we paired up together? So many questions swirled around in his head. But he didn't have time to answer them. They had to rejoin the group. Let's go find the group, Aoyama said while afraid. 𝗂𝗧 just nodded. So they just ran to the front to rejoin the group, but they went the long way around to avoid confrontation with any more villains. Amethyst, 𝗔𝗫𝗓𝗄, you're up, Emerald said. Finally, Amethyst said while cracking his knuckles. Ready? He said while looking at the man with hands on him. He nods, and the two rush at Eraserhead while the hero saw them and does the same. 23 seconds, Emerald said. 24 seconds, 20 seconds. Eraserhead turns to see who's talking and also sees the two charging at him. So whose is the leader and who's the follower? He said as he ran to attack 𝗧𝗫𝗓𝗄. But 𝗧𝗫𝗓𝗄 was quick and grabbed his scarf, and the teacher countered with a jab to the stomach. 17 seconds, Emerald continued. Every time you finish a given move and your max duration's getting shorter and shorter, there are moments where your hair falls in front of your eyes. It's hard to tell when you're scampering around, but don't overdo it now, Eraserhead, Shigaraki and Emerald said in unison while Shigaraki grabbed the black-haired man's elbow. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and punched the hand-covered man in the face. Amethyst took this as an opportunity to attack Aizawa from the side with an explosion. He managed to catch the teacher temporarily off guard, but for too long he steadies himself after being pushed back. Then, the black-haired man activated his quirk, deactivating the ash blondes. TCH, the crimson-eyed boy clicked his tongue, remembering the teacher's quirk. So he charges with great speed and strikes him hard in the other man's stomach. How is he this strong and fast? I erased his quirk, the black-eyed man thought, panicked yet somewhat stoic on the outside. 2 more villains attacked him, but he still dodged them despite his elbow being injured. Eraserhead steadies himself, his back facing the less problematic villains for him. Your quirk, it's not good in long group battles, huh? Emerald said confidently as he walked forward, with Aquamarine following behind. They stopped once they got closer to Shigaraki. This is kinda different from your usual work, yeah. Yet you jumped right into this fight. Aquamarine finally spoke up, hoping to make the kids feel safe. She smirked under her mask. The one eye that wasn't covered by her hair was screaming excitement. By the way, hero, Shigaraki said. He stood back up and faced the pro. I'm not the boss here, and neither are they. Eraserhead turned around to see a black creature with its brain sticking out of its head standing over him, reaching out toward him. It had a break with sharp teeth, scars all over his body, and appeared to be wearing shorts. The beast suddenly smashed him to the ground, grabbed his arm, and broke it all at once. Meet the anti-symbol of peace, the bioengineered Nomu. The Nomu continued to break Aizawa's arm even further, canceling out quirks. Pretty cool, but nothing special, Aquamarine said. Up against crazy strength, you might as well be totally quirkless, Emerald said, leaning on Aquamarine, almost laughing. The Nomu smashed Aizawa's head back down on the concrete, rendering him unconscious. But the last him Eraserhead saw was 𝗀𝗧𝗍, Kirishima, 𝐔𝐻𝐻, and Ajiro fleeing the scene and off to safety. And the last words he heard were "I am here," before the darkness consumed his vision. All the students who made it to the entrance were in tears. But not sad tears, to see their teacher and the #1 hero burst through the door. However, they did notice that he wasn't smiling, not one bit. I was with Nezu when 𝗂𝗵𝗲 called about the attack, so I sprinted over here as soon as I could. Then I ran into 𝐒𝐴 on the way, and he told me more of what was going on. You kids must have been so scared, and it made my blood boil. All Might ripped off his tie as he continued, Fear not. I am here. I've been waiting, hero, Shigaraki said. You're worthless trash. So I was right, Aquamarine said. I knew All Might would come ahead of the rest. That's All Might. I've never seen him in person before, a villain said, somewhat scared. What a presence. No backing down, you idiot, another said. We're here to kill him. Pissed off, All Might sprinted down the steps and knocked out multiple villains. Nomu, come here, Aquamarine said. The Nomu listened and walked over to the group, away from Aizawa. By this time, All Might was by the unconscious teacher. Why did you do that? Shigaraki said, scratching his neck. I've taken an interest in the teacher, Aquamarine said, so let's let him live for now. The other 3 nodded. I'm sorry, Aizawa, All Might said. The blonde picked up Eraserhead and rushed him back to the base of the stairs, where he saw Kirishima, 𝗀𝗧𝗍, 𝐔𝐻𝐻, and Ajiro. Take him out of here. The 4 students nodded, and 𝗀𝗧𝗍 and Kirishima picked up their teacher and carried him up the stairs. Once the teacher was safe, All Might turned back to face the villains, angry. His sapphire blue eyes were glowing bright, illuminating his black sclera. It's now time for the real fight to begin, Emerald said. Everyone remember the plan. Yes, you broccoli look alike, Amethyst said, annoyed. Amethyst, I know you want to fight more, but please refrain from the name calling. You'll get your chance soon, Aquamarine said, her voice showing no mercy for the blonde. Fine, Nomu, time to do your job, Shigaraki said. The Nomu screeched, and the sound echoed throughout the entire USJ. The 4 devilishly grinned as they looked at the pro hero standing before them. The real battle could now begin. AHHH, no good. I'm sorry, father, Shigaraki said while picking up the pale blue hand from the floor and putting it back on his face. Throwing punches to save people. Ha ha ha, that's our state-sponsored violence. He continued laughing, almost mockingly. You're fast, Emerald said. Too fast to keep up with, Amethyst said, continuing where Emerald left off. But not as fast as expected, Aquamarine said, finishing the sentence. Could it really be true that you're getting weaker? The 4 said in unison. It was bone-chilling, shake you to your core creepy. Their eyes had a familiar yet unfamiliar feeling in them. All Might took one look at 3 hooded villains and saw something in them that felt familiar. He saw fear and sadness hidden behind the anger, devilish intent, and glee in their eyes. On top of that, he recognized the 3 cloaked people for their meeting. They were the ones who watched the class and were in the USJ earlier in the week. The #1 pro knew he would have to share his findings with the other heroes later, But in the meantime, he had to protect the students and injured teachers until backup arrived. So All Might sprinted toward the four, his arms crossed and hands in blades. "Nomu," Shigaraki said. "Carolina smash." All Might yelled so loud that it echoed through the building, almost shaking the foundation. He swung his arms out, making an X as he screamed. It hit the black creature called Nomu, but it had no effect. No effect at all. Seriously, All Might thought to himself as he attacked again. This time, a pinch to the gut. A large BOOM echoed through the building once more as the attack became futile. No effect, because he's got shock absorption. If you want to really damage Nomu, you'd be better off slowly ripping him apart, piece by piece. Not that he'll give you that chance, Shigaraki said triumphantly, as if he had already won. Emerald and Amethyst shook their heads while Aquamarine bonked Shiggy on the head. "Thanks for the info. Appreciate it," All Might said, still fighting the Nomu. Finally, he managed to grab one of its arms, ripping it clean of its body. However, it grew back only seconds after. "I don't remember saying that's all he can do. This is hyper-regeneration," Shigaraki said. "After all, Nomu is a superpowered living sandbag designed to withstand everything you've got and kill you, All Might." All Might jumped back to distance himself and the behemoth in front of him. He knew he was already past his limit but couldn't leave his students in danger. So he thought for a moment about the situation in front of him. How can I defeat this creature? It soon hit him. All Might charged at the Nomu, and it did the same. Their punches collided, and the next, and the next. When one would send a punch, the other would counter with a punch. It's absorption, not negation. So he must have a limit. "No," All Might said with a booming voice. "Built to counter me, you say? Made to withstand everything I've got. Then I'll just go beyond that." He continued his barrage of punches as he continued his speech. "Tell me, villains, do you know the meaning of plus ultra?" As he says the last two words, All Might sends his most robust attack at the Nomu, sending it flying through the USJ's roof. Smoke and dust now surrounded the #1 hero. "Well, villain," the yellow blonde said as the smoke and dust cleared, "how about we hurry this up and finish this?" "You cheated," were the only words from the pale blue villain with the hands. "Hands up. And no quirks allowed," a villain said while holding a certain short-circuited blonde. "Try anything, and I'll kill him." The two girls did as they were told. "Kaminari," a concerned Momo shouted. "He got him." "Kid got careless," Jiru said. "As an electric type myself, I don't want to kill him, but I will if I have to," the villain said while activating his quirk in the opposite hand that was holding Kaminari. "He was waiting to ambush us when we thought they were all down. How did we not see this coming? An electric type. He must be the signal jammer that Todoroki mentioned," Jiru said while collecting herself. Then, she took a deep breath and started to speak again. "I always thought this about Kaminari. But you electric types, you're all natural-born winners, yeah." Her tone was now kind of cocky, and Momo was shocked at what her classmate was doing. So the black-haired girl let her friend continue. "Never mind being a hero. There are so many different jobs you could do. This might sound naive, but why become a villain? I just got to wonder. Thought I wouldn't notice what you're up to." Jiru clicked her tongue as she retracted one of her jacks. It'd take a real idiot to fall for a kid's stupid trick. Heroes in training should take hostage situations more seriously. "If you come quietly, I'll let this blockhead go, okay?" The statement caused the girls to shiver and shake in fear. "What'll it be? Your lives or his?" "Now, don't move." "Excuse me, but what is happening here?" The girls were surprised to hear another girl's voice but didn't know who it was or where it was coming from. However, the villain holding Kaminari knew, and he shivered in fear. "I came to check on the villains in each of the different sections. And what do I hear but a villain talking about killing a child? Aquamarine, why are you here? Did you kill All Might? Also, I wasn't actually going to kill him. I promise," the villain said, trying his best not to stutter. Jiru and Momo kept looking at the girl, who managed to scare the villain. But unfortunately, they couldn't see much of her head or face because of her mask and hood. Aquamarine just chuckled. "No, we didn't kill All Might. He's still fighting the Nomu, but it looks like the Nomu might lose. So I came to check on all of you and round up whoever was still standing," she said calmly. "But back to the matter at hand. What did the boss say about killing the students?" "I'm sorry. I promise I won't do it again." "You better not. But if you do, boss will deal with you." "If I may ask, who is the boss? Isn't it Shigaraki?" This question earned a laugh from the girl. "Oh please, that man-child. Not even close. The boss is way more powerful than him. Emerald, Amethyst, and even me. Boss gave us life and a purpose. Before the boss saved us, Emerald, Amethyst, and I don't remember much of our past. He became the only person we trust. And you should, too." Aquamarine turned around and walked away. "Carry on for now, but whatever you do, don't kill anyone." The villain nodded and turned back to the girls. "Now, where were we?" "You cheated," Shigaraki said. "You've weakened." "Not that I can see. We're completely outmatched. How dare you do that to my Nomu?" He slowly started to get up. By this time, Aquamarine had come back. "Where did you go?" Emerald said while watching everything that was taking place. Decided to try and see which of our troops remained and round them up, 𝗂𝐴quamarine said calmly. Okay. The two continued to watch Shigaraki. He's not weak at all. They lied to me. Well, coming to get me. What happened to clearing the game? All Might said, if you can take me, then bring it on. Emerald and 𝗂𝐴quamarine smiled and nodded to each other before walking over to their young master. Fear not, Shigaraki, for all hope is not lost, Emerald said, while an evil smirk slowly appeared on his face. Right. We can do this. The final boss is standing right there, Shigaraki said. Amethyst, if you please. As these words left Emerald's lips, a large explosion hit All Might from his left side, followed by Amethyst appearing out of thin air. Got to love invisibility, Amethyst said while smirking. The sudden attack caught All Might off guard and scared Class 1A. Soon Emerald and 𝗂𝐴quamarine also joined in on attacking All Might, electrocuting, burning him in spots, and hitting him on his side. All Might did his best to block and counter their attack, but it didn't do much good. This went on for a while. Again, Emerald, Amethyst, and 𝗂𝗏amarine attacking All Might, and All Might having to dodge, but failing their attacks. A knife to the shoulder, a kick to the back, a punch to the face, a shock to the leg, an energy beam to the hip, another explosion, and more. Finally, Shigaraki reaches to attack All Might and catch him by surprise, but his hand was suddenly shot. He howled in pain, which caught the attention of the three. Protect the young master, 𝗂𝗏amarine said. The other two listened to her command and surround Shiggy. Where did that come from? I know. Where? Emerald said, making a shield and looking at the top of the stairs. The other two follow his gaze to see Snipe with his gun at the top of the stairs. Sorry, everyone, they heard someone say. Then Snipe aims and shoots the villain holding Kaminari. We're a little late. We brought everyone we could. Ida, Ochako calls out in happiness. President of Class 1A, Tenya Ida, reporting for duty. Ida yells, Shigaraki, I believe this would be a great time to retreat, Emerald said while holding up a shield, protecting them all. Emerald is right, young master, Kurogiri said. Shigaraki surveyed the area and the situation before sighing. Okay, fine. Guess we gotta try another time. Shigaraki said. Kurogiri understood what he meant and opened a portal back to the bar. One by one, everyone entered the portal, but before Shigaraki left, he said one last thing. I may have failed here, symbol of peace, but next time we meet, you're dead, All Might. And with that, he disappeared into the portal. Emerald appears on the other side of the portal to see 𝗂𝗏amarine sitting at the bar, using one of her quirks to heal Shigaraki. Amethyst was leaning on a wall with his mask pulled down and a scowl on his face. Kurogiri was now walking to the bar to clean glasses and pour drinks for everyone. There you go, young master. All healed up, 𝗂𝗏amarine said, putting away the first aid supplies. An eerie quietness filled the room, a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. No one wanted to speak and break the silence, almost as if a bomb would go off if it did. Eventually, the TV turned on. Status report, a voice said. 𝗂𝗏amarine was the first to speak up. The symbol of peace was definitely weak, like you said, master. However, we didn't get the chance to kill him, only weaken him more. The rest of the pros managed to arrive before we had the opportunity. Most of our people were defeated and captured. Shigaraki was shot in the hand by Snipe. I healed the wound, but he won't be able to use his hand for a while. We lost the Nomu. Finally, we have managed to instill fear in the people of Japan, she said with a straight face. Well, no use crying over spilled milk. This endeavor was not a complete loss. Find stronger troops. Take all the time you need. We can't move freely, the voice in the TV said. That's why we need a symbol like you, Tamura Shigaraki. Next time, the world will know of the terror you represent. Master is right, Emerald said. It's not like this was our only shot. We will have other chances to kill All Might. We managed to instill fear in the people of Japan, a crack in their trust in heroes. We can widen that crack until the hero's foundation crumbles. However, we can only do that with a leader. Shigaraki, you are that leader. Everyone in the room turned to face the pale olive-skinned boy and bowed. Shigaraki, it's time to lead us. The man-child smiled at this. Okay, then, Emerald, Amethyst, and 𝗂𝗏amarine. I want you to train and continue to observe Class 1A. If I remember correctly, the UA Sports Festival is coming up. See if any of the participating students are fitting to be a villain. Kurogiri, let's go track down Stain. Sensei, tell the doctor to make more Nomus. Our next attack will turn the odds in our favor. 16.17.18. A man in a trench coat finished counting all the students. All students are here and accounted for. And except for a few minor scrapes and bruises, everyone seems unharmed. While waiting for further instructions, Class 1A started talking about their experiences with one another. Takoyami even shared the revelation he thought of while hiding from the villains in the landslide zone. Think about though, he started. How else would they know exactly where to put us? They knew 𝐬𝐬𝐴 is useless in the cold, and Todoroki doesn't use his left. They also knew the Kirishima and Ajiro can't really use their quirks in water. They could have known this only if they had watched us use our quirks and had someone who could analyze them. And where is the only time they could have done this? The quirk assessment exam Aizawa gave us at the beginning of the year. That does make sense, the man in the trench coat said. Thank you, Detective, the Ravenhead student said. It was only just a theory at first, but with everyone saying where they ended up just proves it even more. Detective, 𝐬𝐬𝐴 said. She had gotten her wounds attended to and was warmed up, so she rejoined the group. What about Aizawa-sensei? Both arms were smashed to splinters. His face is also fractured. Thankfully, he doesn't have any brain damage, Detective Tsukachi said. But his eye sockets have been pulverized. There's a chance he may suffer long-term loss of vision. Or so I hear. 𝐬𝐬𝐴's eyes widen in fear and worry for her teacher. 13 has terrible lacerations across his back and upper arms, but his life isn't in danger. All Might has many bruises and cuts all over his body. He also has a few broken bones. He turned to one of the officers to his right. I actually have business with him. Sansa, I'll leave the rest to you. Understood, Sansa said while saluting. We'll need to completely revamp our security systems, Principal Nezu said. Teleportation quirks are rare enough. Shame one of them had to go and turn villain, Midnight said. Detective Tsukachi, an officer said, I have a report. We've apprehended what seems to be a villain in a thicket about 400 meters from here. In what condition? He seems unharmed, and he didn't resist arrest. Oddly enough, he's not responding in any way. He appears to be mute. I see, Tsukachi said. Then, he turned to face Nezu. Principal, I'd like to go over the school with a fine-tooth comb, if you don't mind. Ah, of course, the mouse-like creature said. I'm sure some won't be happy, but the police certainly have jurisdiction. Investigations are your field of expertise. Do what you feel is necessary. Thank you, Nezu. Also, do you mind accompanying me to the hospital? I want to talk to All Might. I don't mind at all, but let's get the kids home first. As the two turned to leave, their names were called Principal Nezu. Detective. They turned back around to see Momo and Jiro running toward them. We have something to tell you, Momo said. What is it? Detective Tsukachi asked. When we were in the mountain zone, Kaminari had gotten taken hostage by a villain. Shortly after, another villain, who the other called Aquamarine, showed up. The first villain was scared of her. Apparently, the villains were told not to kill the students, which was weird. However, what was weirder is that she said that some guy named Shigaraki wasn't the boss. Instead, it was someone else. Someone more powerful than Shigaraki. Aquamarine, Emerald, and Amethyst. Aquamarine, Emerald, and Amethyst apparently don't remember much of their past, so their boss became the only person they trusted since he gave them life and a purpose. The principal and detective's eyes widened in shock before they recollected themselves. Thank you, Momo, Principal Nezu said. We'll put this information to good use. And with that, they left to see All Might. A deflated All Might was lying in a hospital bed, wrapped in bandages. He sighed as he thought about the battle. The three villains he fought seemed to know his attack patterns and work extraordinarily well as a team. Yet, his mind still went back to their eyes, so emotionless and empty, yet they looked like they were silently pleading for help. Something didn't feel right about them. He thought about all the possibilities of who they could be. However, he was so deep in thought that he didn't see Detective Tsukachi walk in with Principal Nezu on his shoulder. Hello, All Might. Do you mind if coming and chat? The detective asked, startling the hero. No, I don't mind at all, All Might said. What do you want to know? I wanted to talk about what happened from your point of view. I need to know what caused you to get so beat up. All Might sighed. Okay, the hospitalized hero said. Then, Tsukachi took out a notepad and wrote down everything he could. So, All Might began to recall the fight. There were three hooded villains who called themselves Aquamarine, Amethyst, and Emerald. They were the same villains that were spotted in the USJ and were watching the class a few days prior to the attack. However, there was something else about them. What was it? Nezu asked. Their eyes, All Might replied. Their eyes. What about them? Tsukachi asked. Their eyes had a familiar yet unfamiliar feeling in them. I saw fear and sadness hidden behind the anger, devilish intent, and glee in their eyes, as if there is something that we don't know about them yet. Well, that may correlate to the information that Momo and Jiro gave us, Tsukachi said. What information? All Might said. The next few minutes were spent explaining what the two girls had said earlier. Takoyami also mentioned how they seemed to know everyone's weaknesses. Every student was sent to an area where they struggled, some more than others. Nezu also brought up. I can conclude at least one of two things. One, there is a traitor in our midst. Two, one of the villains that attacked is an excellent analyst. We can't take any chances with our students. I've wanted to enact an idea that I had for a while. We'll put the students in dorms. This way, they'll be closer and it will be easier to protect them all. What do you think, All Might? All Might thought for a second before responding. It would help out a lot. Okay, I will start working on the preparations, and we'll leave you to recover. We'll talk to Aizawa and 13 once they wake up. 𝗬𝗵𝗲 seems okay from what he told us. And with that, Principal Nezu and Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗲 walk out of the room, leaving the #1 hero to his thoughts. The next few days went by quietly. No one could sleep. The moon was all that illuminated their rooms. It was only in those moments that they truly realized what the pros and soon they would be up against. From then on, they knew they would have to grow up faster than most kids their age. It didn't scare them, however. Instead, it filled them with more determination than before. They decided to train hard to catch the villains who attacked them and their teachers. However, no one could predict the events to come. The following morning, Class 1 arrived at their class, still silent as a mouse. No one dared to utter a word to break the peaceful silence that had blanketed the room. That was until Mr. Aizawa walked into the room in his hero suit, practically bandaged from head to toe, and Nezu sitting on his shoulder. "Morning," Aizawa said. "You're back already, Aizawa-sensei." The class shouted in shock. "Glad to see you doing well, sensei," Ada said in a normal tone, which was odd for him. Ada was the type to be loud and somewhat enthusiastic. He was only ever like this when he was sad or serious, if you can call that doing well. Uraraka chimed in. "Glad to see you're doing well," Nezu said from his perch on Aizawa's shoulder. "Today, I have some news for you all. Starting next week, everyone will live in our brand new dormitories." All the students were confused. Aizawa continued. Due to the severity of the recent attack, Nezu decided to implement the idea faster than initially planned. All of your parents have been contacted and were informed about this development. They all have agreed to let you stay in the dorms. Furthermore, in about 2 weeks from today, you will participate in UAS Sports Festival. By this point, the class's jaws were definitely on the floor. Within the next few seconds, the classroom roared with worry and excitement. "Come on, we just had that villain attack. You sure about this?" one student asked. "Yeah, that attack was rather severe. How can UA move on and act like nothing happened?" said another. "I understand your concern," Aizawa calmly stated. "However, it's necessary to demonstrate that UAS crisis management protocols are sound. Compared to past years, there will be at least 5 times the police presence. Anyhow, our sports festival is the greatest opportunity you'll get." The students started to get ecstatic about the event. "Our sports festival is one of Japan's biggest events. The Olympics were once the world's sports festival. The whole country would be whipped into a frenzy over them. But as you know, that tradition has shrunk in scale to a shell of its former self, and as far as Japan's concerned, what's taken the place of the Olympics is the UAS Sports Festival. This happens once a year, so you've got 3 chances. If you're hoping to become a hero, this is an event you can't miss." And with that, the start of their next class began. However, just as quickly as the class started, it ended as fast. The students packed up their stuff and made a beeline to lunch, all but one. Kaminari was walking to lunch with his face discontentedly buried in his phone. He was lost in thought, which was rare for the blonde. Some of his classmates seemed to catch on to their friend's unusual behavior and decided to confront him at lunch. So, while Denki was eating lunch with his earbuds in and lost in his one little world, Mina, Momo, Jiro, Kirishima, Siro, and 𝗀𝗱 all sat around him. "What are you watching?" Mina asked, causing the blonde to jump in his seat, earning a laugh from the people around them. "Mina," Kaminari quietly shouted at his pink classmate. "You can't just suddenly sneak up on people like that. How long have you been there?" "We've been here for the past 5 minutes, Mina said as she gestured to the group of students around them, causing Kaminari to take notice. "You've just been in your little world to notice. Speaking of which, what are you watching?" "Oh, just a video of my cousin and I. We were inseparable when we were kids. My mom and her dad were siblings, but we each got our mother's looks. Our quirks were similar, though," Denki said with a sad smile as he thought about the girl, remembering all the fun they had together. "What happened to her?" Momo asked with saddened curiosity. The blonde sighed before answering. She was Principal Nezu's personal student since the beginning of junior high. However, about halfway through the school year, on her back from lessons, she disappeared without a trace. Heroes and police searched for almost a year before the case was considered a cold case. "Have any traces come up recently?" Siro asked, worried for his friend and classmate. "None leading to her. But about 2 months before the entrance exams, Aizawa had shown up at my parents' doorsteps. As it turns out, she wasn't the only one. He told us that 2 more cases had opened up, similar to my cousin's, which caused him to reopen her case. 2 boys about our age. They ran into All Might, and after having a quick discussion with them, All Might went to the police station to turn in a villain. During that time, the 2 boys disappeared with no traces. Furthermore, they weren't the only ones. Even before my cousin vanished, kids 12 to 15 years old would go missing before reappearing at the most 6 to 9 months later, dead. Since those 2 boys and my cousin have been gone for longer than that, they believe that they are alive but don't know where." Kaminari's eyes started to water at the thought of what the kids must be going through. "Can we see a picture of your cousin?" Jiro asked. Oh, of course, Kaminari replied, snapping out of his thoughts. He took his phone and showed his friends a picture of her. Her name is Ira Akoi, and her quirk is called Techno Shock. Momo looked at the photo with confusion. Something about the girl's eyes felt familiar. Say, Kaminari, can we please see the video you were watching? Preferably with sound, the black-haired girl asked. After agreeing, he unplugged his earbuds and played the video again. The group watched the video of the pair playing happily with each other. Momo, however, was more listening to the girl's voice. Kaminari, how old were you and Ira in this video? This video was taken 2 months before she disappeared. Why do you ask? Momo turned to Jiryu, ignoring the boy's question. Jiryu, doesn't Ira sound like a certain someone from the USJ attack that appeared in the mountain zone? Actually, now that you bring it up, yeah, it does, Jiryu said. Momo, you're not thinking what I think you're thinking, right? It's exactly what I'm thinking, Jiryu, Momo replied confidently. Would one of you care to share with the rest of us? Kirishima asked, now invested in the conversation. Momo and Jiryu turned to Kaminari with apologetic faces. Kaminari, Momo said with a sad yet severe tone. Jiryu and I think we figured out what roughly happened to your cousin and those 2 boys. Her eyes softened as she spoke, and I don't think you're going to like it. Wait, Kaminari said in surprise. Let me see if I understand you correctly. You think that the League of Villains, the same league that just attacked us at the USJ, kidnapped my cousin and those 2 boys and turned them into villains using mind control or something to kill All Might? Ieyasu nodded as Jiryu just looked at the boy with a sad look. The others stared at the 2 girls wide-eyed at the bomb they dropped. It seems like the only possible explanation. However, the only things I need to know are what they went through or who the boss of the league who orchestrated all of this is. But I do know the boss isn't Shigaraki. Aquamarine confirmed this herself. Okay, so should we tell Aizawa about what we, or should I say those 2 discovered? Zero asked after recollecting himself. He had finally decided to speak up after being quiet for most of the conversation. We definitely should, Shinso said, finally deciding to join the conversation. He is the one working on the case, after all, and I think he would appreciate it. Aizawa has been working on it for gods who knows how long without so much as a clue as to what happened. Then, these 2 come along and uncover almost half of the case. Suppose we don't say anything. Who knows when valuable information like this will occur? On top of that, Kaminari's family, as well as the families of those boys, should finally get some relief about their children after so long. Everyone looked at Shinso for a minute. He was right. Hiding this type of discovery wouldn't be right. The question is, when should we tell him? Right now. Without a second thought, Ieyasu stood up from her seat and ran to find her homeroom teacher. Hey, wait for us, Jiryu shouted after her with Mina, Zero, Kaminari, Kirishima, and Shinso hot on her heels. The 6 started running down the hall towards the teacher's offices quickly, so fast that it caught the attention of Ida. Hey, no running in the halls, said the blue-haired boy with karate chop hand movements. Where are you going in such a hurry anyway? We're heading to see Mr. Aizawa about something we uncovered at lunch, Momo said urgently. Her piercing glare cut through Ida's soul, sending shivers down the man's spine. He took a deep breath before speaking. Aizawa is in the teacher's office. I just came from there after dropping off some paperwork. Class rep stuff, you know, Ida said. I'll take you there. The others nodded before following Ida. While making their way to the teacher's office, the boy wondered about all the possibilities of what was so crucial for the ordinarily calm Momo Ieyasu to give such a bone-chilling glare. Once they arrived, Ida opened the door and looked at their teacher. Aizawa-sensei, they have something to tell you. With that, Ida moved aside to let Kaminari, Mina, Momo, Jiryu, Kirishima, Zero, and Shinso inside the office. Midnight, Cementos, All Might, Vlad King, Ectoplasm, Present Mike, and Snipe were also there, looking confused but curious at the student who just entered the office. What is so important that you had to interrupt my nap? Aizawa asked annoyedly. Momo calmed her racing heart and spoke. We discovered something about 3 of the villains from the attack at the USJ, she said earnestly, and it's related to a few cases Kaminari said you took up. Aizawa's glare intensified, startling even the teachers, but Momo remained unshaken in her stance. Tell me everything.